Welcome to Open BxRx Tuesday on BronxNet. I'm your host, Kibin Alleyne, and I'd like to invite you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. I'm happy to announce today is Open Tuesday's first day back in studio after 2 years of taping virtually. BronxNet is one of many organizations that are taking the leap and returning back to the workplace. Joining me for discussion about the state and future of the workplace is Tameshia Bridges of JFF. Tameshia, thank you so much for joining me.
Great. Thank you for having me and welcome back to the studio.
Thank you. Now, as society transitions back into the workplace, whether that be fully in person or hybrid, what are your thoughts on returning?
Yeah, so I think that the question around returning to work is really dependent on who is determined, who is ready to go back to work. And that question really varies depending on the type of job you have. And I think we have to be mindful that returning back to the office or back to work is not an option for all workers. And it's actually been the reality for many of workers over the last 2 years. So, is your job a frontline job that requires you to be face to face? Do you live in an area that has reliable broadband? Or does your life, even particularly care needs, as you talk about the needs of women and families, provide you with the space and the flexibility to be able to work from home? So I think it's really a complicated question. And so, do I think we're ready for this? I think in some ways we are, and I think I applaud the companies who are making it an option for their workers. And I also hope that they're really thinking about and reshaping what their cultures look like, what the internal kind of infrastructure looks like for hybrid work environments. It's not as easy as like flipping a switch or sending a memo and telling everyone to come back to work. You really have to be mindful of what workers' needs are to really be able to make it work and to help make people successful. I'm a full time remote worker, and so I also recognize that it's also a big privilege. And it's one that comes with a lot of complexity that I have to navigate as a worker, and my employer also has to navigate as well.
Now, COVID-19 changed the way society looks for work. There are now options whether you choose if you prefer to work on site, hybrid, or fully remote, like you said you're doing yourself. Here at BronxNet, we've transitioned into a hybrid workflow, but do you think this flexibility is something folks applying to jobs will be looking for moving forward?
I think some workers will. I think really workers are in an interesting position right now where they have a lot of options, and some would even say a lot of power in terms of determining where they want to work, the kind of work they want to do. And so I think it is something that more workers are going to be looking at. As the survey and the data shows, I think more workers do want to work from home, but it's about making sure it's in a company that works for them, that meets their needs, and that the culture is right. So I think that the ability to work from home is becoming an important variable for a lot of people in choosing to go back to work, but I'm not sure if it's the most important variable.
So that kind of leads to my next question. Do you think employers should find a way to incorporate hybrid workflows for employees if possible?
I do think they should. And I think it is, like I said, it's a matter of both the structure and the technology of workplaces as much as it is making sure the culture can adapt and work for meeting the needs of workers that are both at home and workers who are in the office. And how do you make sure that teams can work well and constructively together? So I think it's something that employers should consider if they want to have that on the table. And I think it's becoming a competitive issue as well, depending on the industry that you're in.
Now, in many cases, you can't work from home, and I think you mentioned it before, it is very much a privilege to be able to work from home. But do you find it necessary for people to even go back to the office if they were able to work from home efficiently?
I think, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, you shouldn't make your workers go back to work. Just let everybody work from home. I do think that that is a conversation and a decision that is made by employers. But I do think that it's a decision that we hope is made with the input and understanding of their workforces and their workforce needs. I think there's a lot of variables at play. I think many employees would say that they have proven that they are able to work and be productive at home, and maybe more so. So I think it's something that is complex, and I think it should be taken in consideration in the totality of how an organization operates, both in terms of from a business function and also from the perspective of meeting the needs of their workforce.
Now, people are giving up a lot of convenience as they return to the workplace, but I really want to know, why may employers want their employees to return to the office?
Yeah, and I think it's a variety of reasons. I think some employers and some companies have cultures that really thrive on face-to-face interaction, or structures that really necessitate people in office. Maybe there's a lot of teamwork that it happens. Maybe there's a lot of customer-facing work that you can't really do as well or as productively at home as you can do in an office. And I think there are also some financial realities for companies to consider when having workers work remotely, especially for out of state workers. There's tax implications. Like I said, there's a lot that goes into the decision around how to have um, workers work remotely in the long term. I think, yes, we did have to like flip a very quick switch back in 2020 to make this happen. And I think people are now kind of figuring out the long term sustainability of it, both for employers and for workers.
Now, as someone who specializes in racial equity and justice, what are your thoughts on the finding that women, especially Black women and women of color, felt safer and more comfortable working from home?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember seeing that study a while ago, and it has definitely been a conversation amongst my friends and my peers around what it has looked like and really felt like to work from home. And I would say that at the beginning of the pandemic, especially during the summer of 2020 with George Floyd's murder, the uprisings, and all of everything that was happening that summer around race and equity, being at home definitely felt safer, right? I think we were able to kind of choose the spaces and how and when we were processing everything that was coming with us, or coming at us. We could choose the spaces that we wanted to engage. And I'm not sure we would have had that same level of safety and boundary setting had we been in the workplace and maybe had to have conversations with people that we may not have wanted to have or felt prepared or emotionally ready to have. So I think there is something about the last 2 years that has made it feel um, safer for Black women and for Black people and people of color across the board to feel more safe and comfortable, particularly psychologically safer, emotionally safer, being at home versus being in the office. There's not as many microaggressions to deal with, or other things that go largely unnoticed when you're working in the safety and comfort of your home that you don't realize you're facing when you're in an office sometimes.
Now, since we're on the topic of safety, I want to talk about the fears people have just about being in public and going back to work again. We've made some progress, but COVID still exists. How can employers ensure employees are feeling safe and they're in a safe work environment?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. I think it goes back to following your local public health ordinances if they're still in place, around like masking and distancing and safety and all of that. So this is still, COVID is still a public health issue. And so following the guidance from your local public health organization, I would say is priority number one. I think from there, it's about employers really getting feedback from their employees and asking what is it that employees need to feel safe, and really listening to what they are saying. And then, most importantly, taking action on the recommendations and concerns that people have. If people feel safer wearing masks, then allow people to wear masks in a culture of safety and comfort. If people need to work at a greater distance, then allow people maybe to move workstations and things like that. But I think it's about both paying attention to the science and also listening to the needs and the concerns that your employees have.
Now, this is going to take some getting used to, and some people are still on the fence, but I want to focus on some positives. What are some really great things about returning back to the office?
Even though I'm a 100% remote worker, I would say that there is something about the cohesion, right, that comes with working together in an office. In some ways, working face to face allows for teams to gel easier. And to get to know each other, to learn each other's ways of working. I think there's greater levels of transparency and conversation that happen in person that don't happen in the same way via Zoom or via technology. I think we've gotten used to it, but it's also just easier to collaborate and to bounce ideas off of each other, to check in with people without needing to schedule. I would say another thing, in addition to like the social and collaboration aspects of it, I do wonder if work happens at a more relaxed pace, perhaps when you're in person. I know pre-pandemic, I'm not sure calendars were as back to back to back as they are and have been over the last 2 years, when all you have to do is push a button, hang up a phone, and then pick up another phone or pick up the next call. So I think there could be some benefits related to pacing, related to collaboration, related to cohesion, and related to culture that come with going back into an office, even just on a occasional basis to connect with staff and workers.
Tameshia, thank you so much for joining me. If you take a look on the screen, you can see the social media and website for the JFF where you can learn more information. And once again, thank you so much for joining me. We'll be right back with more Open BxRx Tuesday.